Thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is the fifth of 6 community outreach meetings that we're holding with respect to the comprehensive plan. So as Nicole said, we've learned through each of the first 4, and we really hope we can have a nice and productive meeting. So thank you again for joining. I'll just take a minute to announce the people from the town that are on the call, and please forgive me if I don't see everybody because I have to scroll through 2 screens. But as far as I know, the people from the town that are on the call tonight, myself, I'm Allison Murray. I'm a principal planner in the planning department. Peter Hans, who's the planning director. We're David Barnes from the Department of Environment and Waterways, Director of Environment and Waterways, and Matt Collado, who's a planner in the planning department. We also have a representative from our consultant here. Our consultant is H2M. We have Paul Kinsella from H2M on the call. Did I miss anybody else from the town besides Nicole from Supervisor's Office? Is there anybody else here?
No, I think you got everybody.
Okay, great. So thank you again for joining. I will start to share my screen. As Nicole had said, if anyone has any questions, if you can try and hold them till the end, that's great. If you have something pressing that, that you really would like clarification on or an answer to as we go through the presentation, you can type it in the chat function, and Nicole or one of the other town people will be reading it and can interrupt me to give an answer. Okay. All right, can everybody see the presentation? If someone just nods to make sure.
Yes.
Great. So again, this is the 5th of 6 presentations that we're doing with respect to the Town of Smithtown Comprehensive Plan. If anybody looks closely at this picture, actually, you'll tell that it's not from this year. It's probably from last year because there are little shamrocks on the pavement, indicating that there was a St. Patrick's Day parade. So that must have been last year. So the first slide here, what is a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan, it's a document that is actually, it's required by New York State law for any town that adopts zoning. So for any town that has zoning, they need a comprehensive plan, which has as its underlying purpose the control of land uses for the benefit of the whole community. The town does have a comprehensive plan, however, it is over 60 years old. The town began updating it in 1957, and 1961 was when the last component of that plan was adopted. So the town began a couple of years ago to draft a new comprehensive plan. We hired H2M architects and engineers. They also have as sub-consultants Tim Haas and AKRF. AKRF is doing a significant portion of the environmental review as well as the transportation component. So the plan is broken up into different sections. You have a land use section, a circulation or transportation component, community facilities, a sustainability plan, a capital improvement plan, and then it also summarizes the recommendations for each of the individual communities in the town into 6 different community plans. That way for people, if you're interested specifically in St. James, you can go just to the St. James portion of the plan. If you're interested in the entire township, you are more than welcome to read the entire thing. This presentation is going to focus on St. James, the St. James community, but we are going to touch on the recommendations that came out of the overall townwide recommendations. So this picture here is just to give people an idea of what is considered the hamlet of St. James for the purposes of the comprehensive plan only. For the comprehensive plan, the hamlet of St. James does not include the 2 incorporated villages of Head of the Harbor and Nissequogue because they have their own independent land use regulations. It includes all of the land that's north of Middle Country Road. So it follows the census boundary. South of Middle Country Road is Nesconset, north is St. James, and that includes the Smith Haven Mall. So St. James, some general information for people. It's the second densest hamlet that inside the town. I believe the first densest was Kings Park. Different from Kings Park, however, and from a lot of the other communities, St. James has a significantly higher percentage of land that's dedicated to single family residential uses. So you can see from the chart on the right-hand side that almost 2/3 of the acreage of St. James is single family residential. There's also a large component that's community services or community facilities. That's largely a result of the schools that are within the hamlet. Here, I'll start back in the winter of 2019 is when we really began the process of drafting the comprehensive plan. And the first stage of that was getting community input, public outreach. So we conducted a pretty broad community outreach campaign. And you'll see on the left-hand side, this is one of the articles that was in Newsday. We had done announcements at each of the town meetings. We had articles in Newsday, in the Smithtown News, the Times of Smithtown, other online news sites. We had the information on the town website, on social media. We passed out flyers. Most of the downtown buildings had flyers in them, and we also had flyers distributed by, I think, each of the school districts sent home either in the regular mail or via email to all of their students. The flyers advertising the public outreach that we were doing, because we were trying to get as much input as possible. We also reached out to all of the community organizations within the town to have them reach out to their membership. So as a result of that, we got a pretty decent community response. We had, there were two aspects of the response that we were looking at. One was we did an online questionnaire, and the other was that we had public workshops. We had a public workshop for each of the communities. So for the online questionnaire, we received about 1,200 individual responses. And then for the public workshops, we had about 370 people attend the public workshops. The public workshop for St. James was held March 27th, 2019. It was at St. James Elementary. We had about 90 people that attended the workshop. And we also, separate to that, we had about 80 St. James residents that completed the questionnaire. So of the 1,200 that had completed the questionnaire from the previous slide, at least 80 of them indicated that they were St. James residents and went on to answer the questions specific to St. James. There may have been more, however, these are the people that said that they were residents of St. James. In addition to those two outreach efforts, we also did a more detailed study for downtown St. James. So this is different than what was done in each of the other communities. We had received some extra funding from New York State, and that was actually at the request of community organizations and the town, in order to conduct a Lake Avenue visioning study. So, really, there were 3 levels of public input here. From the public workshop, this slide just summarizes what the comments that we received at that public workshop were. So with respect to Lake Avenue, people wanted to keep the supermarket, to beautify the streetscape. People indicated that Washington and First Avenues were used as a bypass. People wanted to see the utility poles, so on both sides of the street, the east and the west side, to relocate the utility poles along Lake Avenue to beautify the streetscape, to create design guidelines to make it a more cohesive business district. With regard to transportation, the major comments that we received were to improve pedestrian safety. People wanted to make sure that there were improved and better sidewalks along Lake and Woodlawn, to possibly eliminate parking on one side of Lake to replace with a bike lane, For community facilities, the main comments were to preserve historic structures and the historic identity of the town, of the hamlet of St. James in particular, to enhance Moriches Park. And then the last aspect really focused on the environment, and the comments that we received for that were to encourage the use of green infrastructure, sustainable development, and consideration for coastal erosion in the area, which is most particular to the hamlet of St. James, given the bluffs and all the waterfront. For the survey responses, so this is the last slide was the responses that we received at the workshop. The next few slides go into responses that we received via the online questionnaire. So townwide responses. So this is of the 1,200 people that responded. Top 5 reasons that people chose to live in the town of Smithtown was quality of schools was number 1, quality of life. They found a home that they liked. They were close to family and friends, liked the character of the community. So these reasons are important for the town in guiding our future land use decisions, and the policy that's set. It's important that the town keep in mind the reasons that brought people to the town of Smithtown. Issues of concern, number 1, of course, for everybody, is property taxes. Also the condition of the parks and recreational facilities. Access to parks and recreational facilities is important. Environmental quality, the traffic, obviously in many of the hamlets of the town, traffic is an important issue, and bicycle and pedestrian safety. Next slide. For the survey responses, this is townwide again. Land use comments that we heard come through loud and clear was to keep single family residential neighborhoods as is, to encourage restaurants and retail, primarily in the downtowns, agriculture, commercial recreation, offices and institutional uses. So these are all uses that, that people wanted to see more of. Generally to discourage industrial uses, which is not much of a surprise. And to improve biking and walking conditions. There were also comments pertaining to sustainability. So just to give a flavor for what we were seeing was people wanted to see planting of more trees, more green space, incentivizing businesses to build green, making it more sustainable, going into the building green infrastructure, the LEED design and so forth. For parks and open space, people wanted to see more hiking and walking trails, more natural areas and nature parks, more bike trails. So really an active form of recreation. And I think the town hears that. Going into the St. James survey responses. So these are the 80 or so people that replied that they were residents of the hamlet of St. James. These survey responses reflect their responses. So about 90% eat in St. James restaurants. It's actually a little bit lower than in other parts of the town. And I think that's primarily because of the number of restaurants that there are in the individual hamlets. About 63%, so 2/3 shop in St. James retail stores, and it goes down from there. We also asked people, given what they do in their hamlet, what would they want to do more of? What would they want to see more of? So the top responses were, would like more restaurants and bars, would like more establishments for entertainment. That's, theater, movies and so forth. Microbrewery and distillery, high-end retail stores, cultural facilities. So that goes, that's museums, that's art and so forth. We asked the question in 2 different locations. So this first one shows the online questionnaire. And we have a similar question that was asked in the visioning study. But for the online questionnaire, the question was, what kind of height, what kind of style building are you, would you like to see in the town? What do you find appealing or unappealing? There was the strongest support for 1-story standalone and for 1- to 2-story buildings that were built to the sidewalk. And these questions pertain to Lake Avenue, I should say, sorry. There was strong opposition for buildings higher than 3 stories and opposition for higher than 2 stories as well. There was requests to really improve pedestrian access and to create a community park or civic plaza along Lake Avenue. Other questions pertaining to St. James for parks and open space, historic resources, people wanted to see pocket park, civic space on Lake Avenue, preserve remaining open space in the hamlet, maintain 25A as a historic natural corridor, and to preserve the firehouse. For Gyrodynes, there was a question specifically pertaining to Gyrodyne and what people would like to see occur with Gyrodyne. Most people, lots of people had said they wanted to see it preserved in its natural state. Others had indicated that they wanted to see a sewage treatment plant that St. James could connect to, off-campus housing for the university, and also support for the conceptual proposal that that Gyrodyne has pending, which was for a possible assisted living hotel office space. As of right now, their application is just a subdivision application. However, their conceptual uses were that. So I had mentioned that different from the other hamlets in St. James, we actually did a third step, which was the Lake Avenue visioning study. This was really interesting for anybody that that participated, and I know that there are some people that are on the call that had participated. You'll see on the left-hand side, that's the flyer that that we had prepared. And this was an interesting community outreach effort. We did it in the summer of 2019. It was a 2-day charrette with 1 day in between for the consultant doing drafting to responses. They also did a visual preference survey that over 500 respondents responded to. A visual preference survey I'm going to go through in a little bit. But basically what it is, if you look at the left-hand side, is they show a bunch of pictures and ask different questions and say, for instance, which architectural style do you like the most? And, pick your top 3. What building height, do you want to see along Lake Avenue? Pick your top 3. What kind of architectural materials appeal to you? What kind of uses do you like? So it was a really interesting, it's a really interesting approach. It's a great planning tool, and it was really awesome to see the number of respondents that we had, which was considerably more than the responses that we had for the online questionnaire for the plan in general. The people that we had invited to participate in the charrette, we had representatives from all the local organizations. We had the St. James Chamber, the Community Association of Greater St. James, Celebrate St. James, the St. James Fire Department, Wake Up Lake, which was a Facebook group, and the neighbors and residents around the Lake Avenue area. The next few slides go through the results of the visual preference survey that was conducted for that. So the first question was building scale. At what scale or height would you like to see new buildings developed? Mind you, this pertains to Lake Avenue. People were given the opportunity to select up to 3 options. So the top 3 options are listed. They're up at the top here. So the first one was 2-story, approximately 30 feet. Next was a 2-story building that was 38 feet high. Third was a 1-story building. The ones that received the least amount of support from respondents were the bottom ones that you see here, the 2 4-story buildings. However, you can see all the information on the left-hand side. And for anybody that's interested, all this information is available. It's actually in the appendix of the comprehensive plan. Type of businesses that people would like to see. So they could select up to 8 options. I think there were about 20 options that were available. So I'm just showing on the right-hand side here the top 4 options that were selected. Sit down, casual restaurant, coffee shop, retail store, bar, lounge. The things that people did not want to see in the downtown on Lake Avenue, drive-through restaurants, like a fast food restaurant, service stations, so filling station, gas station, auto body shop, laundromat, convenience store. Those were things people had steered away from. types of streetscape amenities that people wanted to see. Outdoor dining, street trees, planters, these were all top. People did not want to see barriers such as fencing, blocking areas off. And I think this is the last slide that I have for the visual preference survey. Yes. There were, I think, about 10 other questions that were asked. These were the ones that I thought people would be most interested in seeing. However, again, all of the information is in the appendix of the comprehensive plan, so you're welcome to take a look through that. The next section that I'll go into is the recommendations. So all we've spoken about up until this point has really been public outreach. And we'll get into recommendations here. So the town-wide recommendations. So for the entire township, not just the hamlet of St. James, the recommendations to modernize and simplify the zoning ordinance to, I'll call it right zone properties. There are a lot of properties throughout the town that have a use that doesn't match what the zoning district is. And so the recommendation is to really change the zoning to match the use where appropriate. To reduce split zoning, which also helps reduce confusion and protects the residence districts. To maintain existing neighborhoods, to reduce incompatible uses. For the downtowns, the recommendation is really geared towards revitalization of the downtowns and transit-oriented development in the downtowns. In Nesconset, there's a recommendation for 2 new zoning districts, the commercial corridor district along a small section of Route 347, and the Nesconset core zone along Smithtown Boulevard. Also in St. James, there's a new zone recommended for Lake Avenue, particularly. Other townwide recommendations to expand the uses that are permitted within the Hauppauge Industrial Park, and to differentiate zoning between West Jericho Turnpike and Middle Country Road. And I'll get into the ones that pertain specifically to St. James in the next few slides. The transportation recommendations, largely to enhance pedestrian accessibility near transit and downtowns and the industrial park, to promote traffic calming solutions, fill gaps in the bicycle network, work with New York State DOT and Suffolk County DPW to deploy time signal progression, to consider a complete streets policy and strategies in commercial and mixed use development areas particularly, and to continue to work with the state DOT and county DPW and the MTA to reduce congestion and improve rail service townwide. For community facilities, recommendations to upgrade existing facilities across the town, to acquire additional open space wherever possible, to consider establishing an open space fund in order to acquire additional open space, to create an additional recreation and community center, because currently the town's only real community center is the senior center. Protect historic resources, and as I said, establish an open space fund. So the next slides get into the specifics for the St. James area. The first slide here shows you one of the areas of change. So there are 3 areas of change in St. James. There's Lake Avenue, 25A or North Country Road, and then Middle Country Road. So the recommendations for Lake Avenue are to change the existing central business zoning along Lake to a St. James specific zone. So currently the central business zone is in each of the 3 Smithtown downtowns. So Kings Park, Smithtown, and St. James. It's also scattered in a few other locations throughout the town. So to differentiate St. James from the other downtowns, we recommend creating a new downtown zoning district for St. James. The purpose is to encourage residential in the downtown on upper levels and in the transit-oriented development locations that I'll go into in a minute. Focus on pedestrian improvements, shared parking to reduce the number of curb cuts out onto Lake, and vegetative buffers to residence districts. So the core area, there are two sub-districts that are recommended. One is called the Lake Avenue District Core, and the other is the Transit-Oriented Development District. So the core goes from Woodlawn up to the railroad, and then from the lumber yard and school to the north up to Moriches Road. The transit-oriented development area are the lots that are immediately adjacent to the railroad. So the King Cullen lot, the MTA lot on the north side of the tracks, and then the old lumber yard on the east side. This table here is just to give people that are interested some information about the differences in the zoning classification. You'll see on the left-hand column is the existing central business zoning standards. And then the two right columns are the standards that would be recommended for the transit-oriented development and then the core zoning districts. So in the core, the town is looking to maintain the same minimum lot area and height restrictions of 2.5 stories and 35 feet in height. That's what currently exists now and recommended to continue. To establish a maximum front yard setbacks. The benefit of that is that it brings the buildings closer to the street on Lake Avenue to create more of a standard retail wall. To reduce rear yard setback from 50 feet to 25 feet. That's in the areas not adjacent to the residence districts. In the transit-oriented development locations that I had pointed out, it would allow 3-story height for the part of the lots that is immediately adjacent to the railroad. And the other part of the lots would have a 2-story height restriction. It would allow, so the transit-oriented development area would allow mixed use. It would also allow apartments and townhouses. This slide we put in here to give people some information about the revitalization status for Lake Avenue. It's been torn up for a while. We just wanted people to know where, how far along we were. So the water main was replaced in 2020. Dry sewer line was installed in 2020. We completed all the curbs and sidewalks and snow strip also in 2020, and we were able to plant approximately 70 street trees. Beyond that, we have the installation of decorative signposts going on. Lamp posts are expected 2021. Benches and garbage pails were actually just delivered, so those will be being installed very shortly. We also anticipate the final road resurfacing and crosswalk markings will be in the next couple of months. So it's moving along. It's moving along well. We also have a new municipal parking and park that we anticipate for 2021. This is the site of the former Irish Viking. So thanks to Nspire and RDA, we took your sketch. So you see on the left-hand side, I know Mike is on the call. I saw him. So this is a conceptual design of what we're looking for that parking lot. The next area of change is the current, it's currently zoned central business. This is along the North Country Road corridor. It's these two locations here. So the recommendation is to rezone from central business to a neighborhood business zone to better reflect the existing corridor uses, as well as the recommended changes in each of those zoning districts. So the new neighborhood zone, which would be different from, or I should say, an expanded uses from what's there currently, or from what's allowed in neighborhood business currently. It would modify the NB zoning district to better reflect what its stated intent is, which is to encourage moderate intensity office and service development and uses that are designed principally to serve the needs of the adjoining neighborhoods. So uses that will be permitted in this area include retail services, personal services, commercial public recreation, restaurants, and food retail. Food retail is things like pizzerias, delis, etc. Any existing non-conforming uses that are there that don't fall into the new neighborhood business zone district would be grandfathered in. The third area of change is along Middle Country Road. So again, I had said the intention here is to differentiate between Jericho Turnpike, which is west of downtown Smithtown, and Middle Country Road to the east. They are currently both zoned wholesale and service industry, WSI. However, the two areas, the two corridors really have a different aesthetic and different lot designs and appeal to different kinds of uses. So the recommendation was to split them up into two different zoning districts. The minor change that would occur here, which is not much, would be to allow food retail, but not restaurants. So restaurants are currently permitted in the WSI zone, but would be limited to just the food retail, the pizzerias, the bagel shops, the delis, etc. And again, any existing uses that are non-conforming would be grandfathered in. There are no other changes to this area. Gyrodyne, the recommendations pertaining to Gyrodyne. I know we had received a few comments from people already via email and letters. So the recommendations that pertain to Gyrodyne, the plan really touches on it generally, just that the recommendation is to maintain the LI, the light industrial zoning district. It recommends rezoning the existing 200-foot buffer along Route 25A and Mills Pond Road to parkland, which would I guess make sure really that it is maintained as parkland and couldn't be developed with any other buildings and so forth. And it also indicates the potential location here for an STP, a sewage treatment plant, to serve Lake Avenue businesses. Just a note on here, it is a pending subdivision application. If anybody has questions about that, we can discuss it at a separate time. You can either contact the planning department or Department of Environment and Waterways to get a status update on that. The next steps in the process. I promise I think this is my last slide. So in the past 2 years, so 2019 was largely spent gathering public input. 2020 was spent putting the plan together. The plan was presented to the town board and the public at the town board's December 15th meeting. And the town board at that point opened the plan up for public review and comment. We are holding 6 community meetings. This is the 5th of 6. The town board will also be scheduling a public hearing in the near future, likely anticipated towards the end of February. Anybody that has interest will be notified of it. It'll also be posted on the town's website. The date has yet to be determined, but it will be properly noticed in the local paper, and again, will be on the website. So for anybody that would like to submit comments, you can submit them now. You can also present directly to the town board at the public hearing for that. The next aspects of the plan really go into the SECRA process. So I'm going to turn it over to David to explain where we are with SECRA and opportunities for comment there.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, as the town board on December the 15th released the draft plan, they also did 2 important steps, or the 2 official steps to kick off the SEQA review, the environmental review. They adopted a positive declaration, which is the formal requirement to start the environmental impact statement process. And they also adopted, released a draft scope document. That draft scope document was available for public comment until January the 22nd, last Friday. And about half of the comments that we received were from people in St. James. And I see a lot of people who sent in comments on this call tonight, which is good. So we are now working with our consultant and those comments to update and revise the draft scope. That's the outline of topics to be studied for the environmental impact statement. So we're going to incorporate those comments we received. We received a lot of comments saying about the 25A corridor and impacts to the 25A corridor through St. James. We also received a lot of comments about to make sure that we included cumulative impacts throughout the document. So definitely those were two topics that came out really strong in the comments. So we're gonna incorporate those into the scope, release the final scope, and then get started in earnest on analyzing everything in detail and drafting the generic environmental impact statement. And it is a draft generic environmental impact statement. And because we don't know exactly what development will ultimately happen and exactly where, we have to do it in a sort of generic way. But there are a lot of topics to analyze and study. So we'll be doing that through the spring. We'll also be getting those comments from the public hearing in February. And they will get incorporated into the draft generic impact statement. Once we have all there'll be a formal comment period on that document once it is completed. It'll be at least a month long. Like the comment period was on the scoping, everyone's welcome to submit comments. The next step after that is essentially answering all of those comments, which is the final, it's called the final environmental impact statement. So that document answers all of them, kind of analyzes if we need to do some more analysis on things, or maybe we need to tweak the plan some. Once that step is done, the next step is called the finding statement. The finding statement is sort of the conclusions of all of the analysis and recommendations for the town board to adopt or adopt with some modifications. So that kind of is a quick synopsis on the steps of the generic environmental impact statement. But if you have questions, I can certainly answer them this evening.
Thanks, David. The very last slide that we have here, if people want to take a picture of it or a snapshot, the different ways that you can submit comments to both the planning department, the town board, and to the environmental department. So for the draft comprehensive plan, number of ways to get yourself heard. First is attend a virtual meeting, which you are all doing, so thank you. You can submit written comments to the Smithtown Planning Department via email. It can be sent to smithtownplanning@smithtownny.gov. It could also be sent to planning@smithtownny.gov. They go to the same email. You can send it via regular mail to Smithtown Planning Department at 99 West Main Street, which is Town Hall, Smithtown 11787. In addition to that, you can attend a town board public hearing for the draft. The date, as I said, is to be determined. There will also be a town board public hearing once the final comprehensive plan is prepared. So after we close the public hearing for the draft, we will then take all those comments. The consultant will respond to incorporating those comments into the plan as appropriate. And then we'll present a final comprehensive plan that will also have a public hearing. So there's considerable opportunity to present your comments and to speak to the board. For SECRA, as David had said, the draft scoping document was open for public review until January 2nd. We did receive a number of comments from the St. James community. And then the review and comment upon the draft environmental impact statement is anticipated for spring of 2021. So I'm going to close my screen share now and open it up. Nicole, if there are people that are interested in speaking, I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand if you have a question.
Right. So if anybody has questions or comments, I see Judy, I'm going to call you in a second. So just before I call everybody, I'm going to announce you in the order that your hand was raised. So if you'd like to ask a question, just use the raise your hand button. It is a little smiley face at the bottom right of your screen. If you push that button, and click the raise hand button, your hand will go up and I can call you. If you're on a phone, you could just hit *9. That'll also raise your hand. And with that, I'm going to ask Judy I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and go ahead, Judy.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Nice presentation, Allison. Thank you very much. So I'm a trustee from Village Head of the Harbor. I live on 25A in St. James, next to the Arts Council building, the Mill Pond House. And I, along with 2 other trustees from our village board this evening, would like to provide some comments on behalf of Village of Head of the Harbor. You should be in receipt of a comment letter that our Mayor Dalgard sent on January 18th. And if you don't have that letter, please let me know. I can get you copies.
We have it.
Okay, great. Our village would like to commend the town for taking on the task of creating a new comprehensive plan. While the draft comprehensive plan is a good starting point, it will be strengthened and improved as a result of input from property owners, village governments, and residents. We hope our comments tonight will help in developing the plan. The village recognizes, our Village of Head of the Harbor recognizes that the environmental review required by SECRA is being carried out separately and is an important part of the overall process. And we're glad to see that that is being completed. The introduction of the draft plan states that it is needed to provide a framework for preserving the town's character, to protect the town's natural and cultural resources, and preserve and protect and enhance the historic, scenic, and cultural and architectural character of Smithtown. So keeping these ideas in mind, there are 2 important components I would like to touch on this evening. One is including villages in the planning process, and the other is adding in-depth analysis with recommendations for State Road 25A corridor to the plan. If we look at page 31, the existing development pattern section of the plan states that the 3 incorporated villages in town control land use within their own boundaries and are therefore not discussed in this report. As indicated by the village's comment letter on the scoping process for the EIS, village governments, particularly those with shared borders along heavily traveled corridors, have a significant stake in the comprehensive plan and should be included in the planning process. State Road Route 25A is a heavily traveled corridor that we share. Under the general land use plan recommendations, page 66, the plan states that the town should work with local partners such as neighboring municipalities to participate in intermunicipal planning. If we are not included in the planning process, decisions you make may adversely affect our community, which is why we are suggesting an in-depth analysis with recommendations for State Road Route 25A corridor be added to the plan. The comprehensive plan and the DGEIS should undertake and provide in-depth analysis of Route 25A corridor from the western end at Woodland Avenue, Edgewood Avenue, the train trestle intersection east to the town border with Brookhaven. This winding 2-lane roadway is designated as a historic heritage corridor protected under state law. The Mills Pond Historic District at the eastern end has been virtually ignored. This designated national landmark includes my property, the Mill Pond House, and crosses east across Mills Pond Road into the Gyrodyne property. The unique character of this visually and culturally significant area, which possesses the last remaining rural corridor in the town, should be the subject of a detailed, focused, separate review to ensure that its character and resources, including its open space, agricultural lands, and historic resources, are not only protected, but enhanced. So those are my comments. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next I have Joseph Bohlhofer. Just go ahead and hit the unmute. It's your lower right. Look to the lower right hand on the bottom. I'm sorry, your left. I'm sorry. It looks like a little microphone. It's
I think I got it.
Got it. There you go.
Yeah, none of my icons were where your icons are. I'm on an iPad.
Sorry.
I don't know if that's why. But anyway, thank you. Listen, I think that all of us appreciate all the work that's going into this. This is a massive undertaking, and fortunately, we're at the beginning. So the input here, I think, is important, and during the next few months, that the town listens and reacts and not just goes on its own way. Judy stole a lot of my thunder. Good job, Judy. But I'm trying not to repeat what she said. I live off of Shep Jones Lane. My law office is on Lake Avenue. I'm also the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the village. So I've been involved with this circumstance for some time, and I'm happy to hear David Barnes say that the cumulative impact is going to be considered. It must be considered. The State Environmental Quality Review Act requires it. The regulations require it, especially in this circumstance in St. James when we're talking about a potential development of Bull Run Farms. And as you know, right across the border in Brookhaven, the Baptist Church, this could be a massive situation if all these properties got developed. Now, I'm not going to repeat what Judy said about the involvement of Head of the Harbor and the historic corridor. It's one of those things where when I looked at this draft scope and I saw the 6 downtowns and I counted 12 other areas that were under consideration here, I think it was glaring that the historic corridor of 25A was missing, and hopefully that oversight is going to be fixed. Regarding transportation assessment, the traffic issues, I don't know if it's a typo, but this draft scope said that traffic conditions at up to 4 key intersections were going to be considered. Obviously inadequate. In a town this size, there has to be, maybe it should be 40 key intersections. In any case, I think you really need to look at that. And I know it's a temporary circumstance, but considering the pandemic, unless this traffic study is not going to start until after the pandemic is over, you really need to state it and address the fact that traffic is artificially low. People are working from home. They're not going shopping. They're not going to entertainment facilities. They're not going anywhere. So whatever traffic conditions you're going to see during the rest of 2021 probably are really artificial, and that has to be taken into consideration. As far as the circumstance with Gyrodyne, I know this is not a forum for particularly addressing it, but the draft comprehensive plan does mention Gyrodyne in a neutral fashion. It doesn't say that the plans at Gyrodyne conflict with the goals of this draft scope or the comprehensive plan. It doesn't say that they're in accordance with it. I think that you need to make some statement and acknowledge that the development that's proposed has a great potential and in some people's minds, an obvious conflict with the town's stated goals of keeping development away from major highways and concentrating them in downtown areas. And also the fact that we have, according to page 232 of this draft comprehensive plan, in St. James, the smallest share of open space in the town, 1.63 compared to 18% in the rest of the town. So if 75 acres is going to be developed over there, even with a green belt or whatever you want to call it, I think that that's going to, again, impact adversely upon that ratio pretty dramatically. On the page 245 of this plan, there were statements, I think it's misleading actually, that said that commentators on this comprehensive plan survey believed that the proposed plans for Gyrodyne were appropriate. And I was one of those commentators. I didn't say that. My comments weren't on that website. I don't know why. And certainly the Village of Head of the Harbor's comments weren't on there. Allison did, I think, correct that to a certain extent because she acknowledged that commentators also said that open space was important. And on that issue, the proposed park zone, the P zone, as it relates to this location on 25A, that is the 200 feet south of and adjacent to 25A at the Flower Fields Fairgrounds property. This is on page 245. There is, it's laudatory to rezone areas as parkland, but that doesn't do anything here. It's window dressing because You probably know that since 1960, there's a restrictive covenant on this property. You can't do anything for 200 feet south of 25A without, of course, removing the restrictive covenant, which would require the written consent of all of those property owners that benefit from that. As a matter of fact, in 1964, when that lawsuit was settled, and I don't know how many people know about it, but it's on the front page, I think, of the Smithtown News today. There was a lawsuit in 1960, or just after that, when the town rezoned this property light industry, and those plaintiffs included the village of Head of the Harbor. They included the Gargiulos, they included the Elderkins, and a bunch of other property owners, including the Perry Farm, people that own the Perry Farm. And as a result of that lawsuit, an additional restrictive covenant was put onto this property. That was not mentioned at all in here. And again, I don't want to get too much into Gyrodyne's plan. I understand that that's a separate subject, but I think that this comprehensive plan for the town has to address what a lot of people consider to be, at least with regard to St. James, the elephant in the room. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Is there
Okay.
anybody else, Nicole, up there? I see.
Yeah, I have Jeffrey Fisher.
Yes, hi there. I'm Jeff Fisher. I'm a trustee in the Village of Head of the Harbor and former member of the Zoning Board of Appeals and chair of that committee. Thanks so much to Joe Bullhofer and Judy Ogden. Great comments. I basically want to just point out that the draft plan quotes directly from New York State Town Section 272A, and noting that among most important powers and duties granted by the state legislature to a town government is the authority and responsibility to undertake comprehensive planning and to regulate land use for the purpose of protecting the public health, safety, and general welfare of its citizens. And on page 31 states that future land use decisions should continue to support residents by ensuring compatibility with existing neighborhood character while preserving and enhancing the town's natural resources. These stated goals of the plan are especially important to our village residents that are concerned that oversized commercial and mixed use developments will overwhelm areas of the town and alter the character of our communities forever. Because of these concerns, I'd like to suggest the town consider that the Gyrodyne project is in conflict with the draft plan. And we believe the town should consider a moratorium on approvals of significant development projects until the comprehensive plan is finalized and adopted. Looking through it on page 71, the draft plan recommends the town should support higher density and traditional mixed use development near transit stations while preserving community character. Clearly, the Gyrodyne proposal conflicts with this recommendation. The smart growth section of the draft plan notes that town can take proactive steps to discourage sprawl and to better environmental conditions by reviewing existing zoning codes and policies as they relate to supporting or inhibiting smart growth. Clearly the Gyrodyne development is an example of massive development sprawl into what is essentially a quiet residential area, which is contrary to both plan recommendations and smart growth principles. We believe the draft plan should be modified to acknowledge the inherent conflicts and inconsistencies between the express goal and objectives of the plan and the Gyrodyne development proposal. The town should consider undeveloped portions of the site to a more restrictive residential zoning classification with a mandatory clustering requirement to ensure that development of the property is consistent with the plan's goals of preserving the character of the surrounding residential neighborhoods and concentrating multi-use developments in downtown areas away from travel corridors. Also to protect the town's natural and cultural resources and preserve and protect and enhance our historic, scenic, cultural, and architectural character of our area. That's kind of all I have at this point, points that I had wanted to bring out. And, again, hoping that the town will consider a moratorium of any, significant development projects until, the plan is finalized and adopted. I know one of our other trustees, Gordon Van Vechten, is unable to raise his hand on his device, so but he would like to be heard. So if you can hear him next, that would be great.
Yes, I have Mike Morbillo first, and then I have Gordon's hand up
Okay,
as
good.
well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is Mike Morbillo.
Good evening. Appreciate the presentation tonight and the comprehensive study that's been put together. My comments are somewhat brief, more related to probably the zoning aspects. But, in general, I think that the zoning that's being proposed is, I think, most appropriate. And I think it really addresses a lot of issues that the town's been facing for decades as far as requirement for variances and special uses and all these other things I can see that have been, it's been nuanced to address that, especially with the WS2 and the Lake Avenue district. I think one thing that I think would probably be important is, and I'm sure it'll probably be addressed down the line in the codification, would be sort of this grandfathering of existing uses with the change in some of these zones. I know that it's usually critical that there be at least a reasonable twilight period, because some cases buildings go vacant due to the economy, and to necessarily take that away just because the space has gone vacant, if there's a reasonable twilight period, which I think probably realty agent, somebody like Mr. Neitzel would probably have good input on, whether it's a 2 to 5 year time frame. But I know that that's a concern for many people, as far as they don't want to necessarily lose something just because a tenant vacates a property. But in general, I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great improvement. It's going to help facilitate a lot of things and probably save a lot of time for people that are looking to make improvements. So that's it on my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, next I have Gordon. Go ahead, Gordon. You might need to hit the mute button or the unmute button so we can hear you.
Got it. How's
Yep.
that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I just want to, as mentioned before, I'm also a trustee in the village of Head of the Harbor. And I wanted to mention some reasons why the Gyrodyne proposal is inconsistent and in contrary to the draft plan. The Gyrodyne mega development is completely inconsistent with numerous recommendations contained in the draft plan. The draft plan wisely calls for concentrating denser commercial, residential, and mixed-use developments in downtown areas, away from heavily traveled corridors. Let me remind everyone of the potential components of the Gyrodyne project: a 150-room hotel, a 150-seat restaurant, a 500-seat conference center, a 130,000 square feet of office space, 220 assisted living units, and 2,000 parking spaces. This would dump an overwhelming amount of traffic onto the heavily traveled corridor of Route 25A, in direct conflict with the stated goals of the draft plan. Not to mention the increased traffic and congestion on smaller secondary roads such as Mill Pond Road, Mauritius Road, Lake Avenue, and in Head of the Harbor Village roads as Shep Jones, Bacon Road, Harbor Road, to name a few. On page 55, the draft plan recommends the specific areas where such developments should take place. It states that the most appropriate locations for mixed-use developments include all downtowns, portions of Smithtown Boulevard in Nesconset, and selected nodes in the Long Island Innovation Park at Hauppauge. The draft plan notes on page 56 that commercial developments create the need for deceleration lanes, which can cause traffic flow to slow and detract from the highway's original intent. While specific reference is made to the Smithtown bypass, Route 25A, a winding two-lane roadway designated by state law as a historic heritage corridor, which cannot be widened, is an even more glaring example of this inconsistency. The Gyrodyne mixed-use development would be a great fit on a site bounded on three sides by four-lane highways, or in an area where the existing character of the community would not be radically changed forever. It's obviously not viable on a site which is instead bounded by two-lane roads and residential communities that have had extensive historical and cultural resources, which would be obliterated by the development. On page 42, the draft plan addresses the need for assisted living facilities and states that the town should prohibit these facilities from most residential zones, permitting them only in the newly created multifamily zone by special exception of the town board. The Gyrodyne proposal instead calls for development of 220 ALF units in what was formerly residential but is now in the industrial zone. Note for the record that ALF units are not an as of right use at the Gyrodyne location, which would require a special exception approval by the town board. In addition to the Gyrodyne property, the Bull Run property on Mill Pond Road is another parcel of undeveloped land that is being considered as an assisted living facility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, I have Linda Demott. I just want to take a minute to remind everybody that I know Gyrodyne is part of the topics tonight on the master plan, and it's a sensitive subject, but we want to make sure that we don't make it all about Gyrodyne tonight and focus on the master plan. With that, I'm going to call Linda. Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you very much. So I was not planning on saying anything at all. I was just going to listen. I'm just a humble little teacher who lives here in St. James. And but I've been listening to the comments here, and I've been following this religiously. And what I'm hearing, and perhaps I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is that the people from Head of the Harbor have not been included to the extent that I think they should be. And perhaps I'm wrong on that, but as somebody who lives on the other side of 25A in the Little St. James houses, I'm going to request that you do an extensive plan on that 25A corridor. I drive to Stony Brook on that road. I walk my dogs, try to cross over Mills Pond Road, and it's scary already. And then when there's problems on 25A, the traffic comes right through my neighborhood on Copper Beach. And it's crazy. I've seen dogs almost get hit on Copper Beach, children almost get hit on Copper Beach, even with the extra stop signs. So I'm making the request that you do that as somebody from St. James, since you don't seem to want to include Head of the Harbor. The other problem that I have here is I see in those master plans, mixed use development, I guess it's called, on Lake Avenue, but you're going to be adding more people right into the downtown area. And I don't know, it seems like we're pretty already crowded here. So I know that people need lower income housing, but I think you have to be very careful about how you have an impact on the people who have bought our homes here and what it does to us. I mean, I moved here 20 years ago because this was a nice little town. So those are my comments, not as eloquent and well-researched, but certainly passionate. Thank you. And thank you for all the work you've been doing. I really am very impressed with all the research, and the presentation was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I live on Copper Beach too, so I didn't know we're neighbors. Pete, do you mind real quick?
I've seen you over there.
Oh, yeah. Pete, do you mind real quick just kind of covering, just to kind of, it's come up in the chats too, with regards to the public involvement. This was, can you just kind of clarify, everybody was included in our public input sessions?
Yeah, I think a lot of people just forget that the process started so long ago. When we had all the public outreach hearings, that was about 2 years ago. It was early 2019, and I mean, we were really promoting it. We were trying to get high levels of participation in each of the hamlet. Most towns, they would just have a couple public hearings at town hall, but we tried to take it a step further. We went to St. James Elementary so that everybody in St. James could focus on St. James. We were at Great Hollow Middle School in Wisconsin. Smithtown had their own hearing. We were at the Kings Park High School as well as Comac High School. So we really tried to promote it back in spring of 2019. It was all over Smithtown News. Flyers were sent home with all the school children. It was all over the town government channel. And so I think the participation was really high. And I mean, to the best of my knowledge, the village should have certainly been notified, especially back then. We're routinely notifying of any zone change or application that's within 500 feet of the borders. And likewise, I receive a lot of correspondence from the villages of Head of the Harbor and Nissaquogue and Village of the Branch on any development applications. So I don't know, I don't think there was any breakdown of communication. I think it's just been a while, and for the last year, there's just been a lot of internal review with respect to the comprehensive plan. We haven't had any public hearings in well over a year. This is where we've been formulating the plan with our consultant. I grew up in St. James, went through St. James Elementary, Nissaquogue, Smithtown East. My mother and my sister and her family, they're still up there. So it's near and dear to me. I was out there every morning during the Lake Avenue reconstruction project, very involved with Moriches Park and doing some of the improvements that we're doing over there. So the consensus was we don't want drastic change in St. James. We like the character. We're just trying to bring a lot of life to the empty buildings and spruce up the appearance. And that was the consensus we were getting from all the visioning studies as well as the workshops. And I think that this draft plan is pretty much proposing that. With respect to Gyrodyne, yeah, it's an ongoing application. It's been, I don't want to say it's been quiet, but it's still under consideration. It's not approved. It's not ready for approval, and it's still under environmental review. So it may be determined that additional studies are needed, but I don't want to comment on it right now because it's it's still under review right now.
Thank you, Pete. I know it's also between, we also had a year 2020. We had a pandemic, a natural disaster, civil unrest. So it's very easy to forget about all the public input that took place the year before that. I appreciate it. I have two other folks with their.
And Nicole, sorry, it's Allison. I'm just gonna jump in for 1 minute because I think that the slide that I had showed probably brought some confusion to the question of whether Head of the Harbor and Nissaquogue were included. So the purpose of that slide was to show that the land use decisions that the town makes pertain to the unincorporated part of the township, that we don't have land use control within the villages. However, the villages and people from the village, I know I saw many at the public outreach meetings, and for any proposal, for the adoption of the comprehensive plan, the public hearings notification will be going directly to the villages because it is absolutely important that they are involved. So from the beginning, it was residents from all of the communities that participated in providing public outreach and the public input that we got. And when it comes time to the public hearings, each of the villages, as well as the surrounding towns, will have the will be notified and will have opportunity to fully review and give comments at that time, as well as through this forum. So.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, next I have Peter Musso. I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to thank you guys for putting this together. I think this is great. You know, obviously there's a lot of effort that has gone into putting this draft plan together at this point. And you know, no matter which way this goes, the fact that these conversations are happening will at some point end up as a benefit to the town overall. The question I have is what's the town's timeline in terms of actually implementing some of these proposals and finalize what we're currently looking at now? Is it a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan? And if you could maybe give, and if you spoke to this already, I apologize, but could you give maybe a little bit of what the town's expectations are for moving forward with this?
Sure, thank you. And actually, it's a good question that that I didn't touch on in the presentation, but a comprehensive plan is intended to be implemented over the course of 20 to 30 years. So it's a guiding principle for policy decisions over that course of time. So recommendations, and I don't have the plan in front of me right now, but I believe the recommendations at the end of each section, there are tables that show whether the recommendation can be implemented in the short term, medium term, or long term. If that's not in the plan currently right now, it's certainly it will be in the final. But some things can be implemented within the next year or two. There are some zoning modifications that the town board could adopt in the near term. In terms of capital projects, that obviously all depends on funding and money and the ability to implement those. So those end up being more longer term projects. The town obviously does not own all the properties in town. So what we can do is we can adopt zoning that would facilitate development. However, we can't make that development happen. So changes in economy, COVID, how well we recover from this, where people are living and so forth, will all affect how quickly the recommendations can be implemented. But as again, there are some things that would be able to be implemented shortly, within the next, 1, 2, 3 years. And then there are some that, could take 10, 15, 20 years to come to fruition.
Allison, excuse me, sorry, I just wanted to chime in to confirm that the recommendations do have that sort of short-term thinking, like maybe within like 2 or so years, and then like a medium term, 5 to 10, and then longer term, like 10 plus years. So to just confirm, and then like you basically explained it right about like a lot of times that depends on sort of the capacity and urgency and like how long something would need to take to really get implemented.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I'd like to say one of the other complications for us is most towns normally would do an update to their comprehensive plan like every 10, 15 years. But they have a benchmark that they're starting with. We don't have that right now. Our comprehensive plan is back from 1957 and 1961, before suburbanization even occurred out here. So you look at some of the elements of that master plan. I mean, it talks about bridges across the Nisququag River, connecting, Nisququag to Kings Park and stuff like that. And it's, we're not working with it. I mean, we're starting from scratch on a highly developed town already. So that's, and a lot of people have interest, from different directions on this. And I think that's really what it is. And once we do get a master plan adopted, we do, expect to every 10 to 15 years periodically have to revisit and say what works and what doesn't work. It is subject to change, but that I think really right now has been our greatest difficulty, is we don't have anything, and what we have is 60 years old.
Thanks, Pete. I have, next up, I have Michael Sassone. I hope I said your last name right.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. My name is Michael Sassone. I live on Mills Pond Road. I'm a resident of St. James, over 30 years now. Grew up in Smithtown. Couple of things of concern. Like I said, I live on Mills Pond Road, and obviously Mills Pond Road is the I guess quickest artery from the Wisconsin Highway to 25A. So we know what's going to happen to that road along Mauritius Road. Concerns with traffic. Just one point we talk, thank you everybody who what's your concern and love for St. James, because I have the same concerns and love for St. James. I'm a local carpenter. I'm a local fisherman. I only fish Stony Brook Harbor. That's my playground. And to see that get destroyed would really break my heart. So one of my concerns is just a point of interest for you historians. From 25A South on Mills Pond Road to Copper Beach Road, there are 10 houses that are from the 1800s. And that's like a quarter-mile trek, if that. My house is one of them. My house is just south of the tracks. I'm part of the Elderkin Farm. I'm split off the Elderkin Farm in the, I guess, 1800s when the train came through. One of the big concerns with all this construction and development, if you will, is what, concentrating on traffic, and we're talking about cars and traffic, but when we're forgetting delivery trucks, 18-wheelers, and all that kind of stuff that'll be coming through. That's happening already. That early in the morning, you see a lot of 18-wheelers come down Mills Pond Road. But to handle all that noise and traffic, and even myself, when I'm coming home 4:30, 5 o'clock, I'm cutting through all the back roads. And somebody brought that up. I think her name was Linda that lives on Copper Beach. I think it was Linda brought that up, that, there's going to be major concerns in the interiors of the residential areas. Capacity wise, we are at capacity development wise as far as bringing in more residential. We do not have the capacity road wise. And the other concern I have, or maybe I missed it somewhere, with the sewer system plan. So the sewer system right now, I think, if I'm not wrong, goes from Woodlawn to 25A. Is that correct? Pete, can you nod your head? Yeah. No.
It goes just slightly south of Woodlawn to Patrick's Way. So it includes the little shopping center just south of Woodlawn. And then it goes up to Mauritius Road by the TD Bank.
Up to Mauritius. Yes. Okay. So the plan, where is the plan to dump that? Where is that heading to?
That is just a dry sewer line, and there's no plan yet for where the treatment would be. The Gyrodyne environmental impact statement does analyze what if the flow from Lake Avenue went there, and what would the impacts be. But currently, that's not a plan, and it's not approved.
So what is Plan B?
Well, I would say the plant locations to be determined. I think the idea was the town spending $4 million on roadway improvements. They didn't want to have to rip it up at a later date and put the pipe in. So they put the pipe in, hoping that someday a location is determined and that we don't have to basically rip up everything that was just spent. We don't know where it's going to be. It could end up over by Middle Country Road. It could end up in a completely different location. But the idea was not to do the roadway twice.
Okay, understandable. Again, just to reiterate, just the 1800 houses and how beautiful Mills Pond Road is and how destroyed that's becoming, and a lot of the interior roads out there becoming destroyed. One of the disheartening things is the garbage that you see on the side of the roads, as it is already. That's making, that's disgusting me. You know, you go by Mills Pond, right by the pond there, and the garbage laying all over the side of the pond there. It's disgusting, you know, and there'll just be more of that. There'll just be more of that disgusting going on. So, you know, keep America beautiful. Let's keep St. James beautiful. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next, I have, I don't have your name. It's listed iPad. I know we were talking on chat before. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and lower your hand if you don't mind just introducing yourself for the record.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I had trouble with my iPad. I'm Erica Rainier, and I've been in the St. James, Nessaquag, head of the harbor area pretty much my entire life. I do believe in progress. I think what I'm hearing from most people is that the greatest concern isn't so much with regard to developing our available land and offering some affordable options. It seems to be the traffic issue. The other things as far as maintaining a quaint town and township can be done with appropriate zoning and facades and that sort of thing. But it is difficult to do anything about the traffic. So I did type in a general question as to ways that maybe traffic could be mitigated. I was thinking, and I spoke to the town planner earlier this week, that maybe some transportation options could be available as opposed to just personal cars. I don't know how to necessarily go about that, but the train might be an option. If the train to those areas can be accessed easily, and or if there's a shuttle that goes from the train to the various villages, that might be an option. The shuttle to Gyrodyne, if that gets built up, that could be an option. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't think you can stop progress, but I certainly do think that we can progress responsibly. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Erica.
Okay.
Okay, so I have Joseph Bolhofer again. I'm just gonna have you lower your hand. Go ahead and
There you go. Thank you. I'll just be quick. When we were talking about a sewage treatment plant potentially being sited at Gyrodyne, and I think part of the problem with some people's views regarding whether they're in favor of Gyrodyne or against it is because of this. I'll call it a quid pro quo. Obviously, it's not necessarily that. There's been no promise, but the town, the state, municipalities have invested a whole bunch of money in a sewage line, and it is needed. But there are people in the county who I know have been exploring the possibility of siting a sewage treatment plant south of Middle Country Road, west of Southern Boulevard. There are areas in there that are viable, and they could serve as a common sewage treatment plant for downtown Smithtown Business District as well. Something that I think that the draft plan should explore, and it should be discussed outright. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have Kathleen Diana, and I'm sorry if that's not your, if you can just correct me if I said your name wrong. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Diana. And Kathleen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let me take care of that. So hi, everyone. My name is Kathleen Diana. I'm also a resident of the village of Head of the Harbor and a longtime member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the village. And I have to concur with my fellow residents and the village trustees tonight, everything that was said. I completely support. I totally think that the neighboring villages, especially with borders, need to have
Kathleen, I'm so sorry. I just accidentally hit the mute button. I meant to mute somebody else. I apologize. Can you just unmute yourself?
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
No, I was just agreeing with my fellow residents that the Village of Head of the Harbor needs to be actively involved in the development of the comprehensive plan. So we have a huge stake in it. The 25A corridor, absolutely, that really needs to be looked at because the location, I think the issue here is with Gyrodyne. The problem has always been with the zoning. And I believe Joe mentioned earlier that back in 1960, this was zoned residential and it was changed to light industrial under questionable circumstances. There was a lawsuit and there were some covenants put in place. But bottom line is, you know, that was 60 years ago and our area has changed significantly since then. And that property now is surrounded primarily by residential neighborhoods. You know, the access is not good, which was said earlier. It's going to create huge traffic issues. And I think that the goal of this comprehensive plan should really be for the town to embrace the opportunity to, you know, prevent significant development projects that are inconsistent with the plan from being approved while the plan is still being completed. So we're seeing obvious and glaring conflicts between the project proposed by Gyrodyne, you know, and what is proposed in the draft comprehensive plan. So I just want to reiterate that this is a great opportunity to really take a look at this piece of property because I don't think that we realize what a tremendous impact this will be on the surrounding area. And we have to use this opportunity to really dig in and really identify all the impacts before this gets approved and pushed through. So the other point I also wanted to bring up is the open space. And what I'm hearing and what was in the plan, it just kind of, to me, kind of jumped off the page that in St. James, we have the second highest density, yet only 1.63% is open space, where townwide we have 18.31%. That to me seems, you know, a little out of whack, and we really are lacking open space. So we really have to be aware of development projects and be very careful because we don't have any open space, any space to spare. So that's really what I wanted to say. And thank you again for developing this plan because I think it's definitely long overdue and we do appreciate all your efforts. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
The next person who has their hand up is a phone number. I'm going to read it. It's 917-816-5529. I'm going to ask you to unmute. If you're on your phone, it's *6 to unmute.
Hello, my name is Sally Lynch, and I'm a resident of Head of the Harbor. And I'm thinking about the open space plan, and I must commend the effort that's been made to enrich our town centers, and that there is a prudent need to preserve open space. I have experience in this department working with Suffolk County for over 20 years, restoring historic Oldfield Farm, the old North Shore Horse Show grounds. And we're constantly approached by a variety of groups for a variety of community events, way beyond equestrian events that we simply can't accommodate because of our size, our location, and the covenants that we live by. And so I'm just making that comment for the group to be aware of, that there is a strong need to have a place that's open that could host such events. And these events can generate independent revenue, as we've shown at Oldfield Farm for over 20 years. So I hope that the committee will regard this and it can enhance the area, keep the space open, have it generate revenue, and keep the rural character of our community. And I thank the group for taking the time to listen to these comments.
Thank you. Pete, I don't know if you want to touch on the work that we do collectively with the county on this at all. I mean, I know there's a couple of previous meetings about expanding open space. I know we've done some open space. We do projects with TDR development, so we can preserve open space with commercial and developers.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been very successful with is something called transfer of development rights. And what that is trying to sterilize properties that we deemed, let's say, where we don't want it to be developed, and transferring those sanitary rights into areas that we want to see developed, such as our commercial district. So if you have a restaurant that might only be able to have 16 seats and they want to have more seating, what they can do is they can buy properties elsewhere in town, sterilize it, and the development rights of that property that's being sterilized get transferred to the restaurant, and that would provide them more seating. We've acquired a lot of properties around town through that method, and it's really been at no cost to the taxpayer because it's the private individual acquiring the property and then donating it to the town. Not to throw him under the bus, but Legislator Trotta, he does a lot of work with trying to acquire open space with the county funds. I know the county funding's been a little bit low, but there's dedicated accounts to that. And he's been aggressively trying to acquire properties from Kings Park, Fort Salonga, through St. James as well. We've also been working with the Peconic Land Trust. We've been trying to do things in the past, not just in the town, but also in the village. We've been actively trying to work with the county on the BB&GG farm and trying to do something there, and with them and Avalon. So I don't know if that helps answer your question.
There's currently several parcels, most of them in the village in Nessequa, and also the BBGG farm in the head of the harbor, and one parcel on River Road adjacent to the Nessequa River, which is in Smithtown, that the county and the town are exploring for open space, or the BBGG one for farmland preservation. So it would still remain a farm, but it would not be able to be developed. And so there are efforts going on to expand open space in this part of the town.
Yeah, I just comment simply because there's a need. We turn events around away on a steady basis because we can't accommodate them. I don't know if any of these parcels are appropriate for that kind of activity, but it's a way to keep space open, generate revenue, and also, serve the needs of the community. A lot of these events are consistent and congruent with the historic uses of these properties.
Absolutely. I know we do quite a bit of concerts at Short Beach, not Short Beach, sorry, Long Beach, which you're right. I mean, people, the local pizza shops, you can tell when there's a summer concert happening at the beach because everybody picks up dinner and brings it down there. It's really, it's great for the local small businesses. It really is. Thank you. Okay, so I have Erica with her hand up again.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. A couple of things. One is that I think that as far as venue land, the Mills Pond property, I think is very underutilized. It's the art place. There used to be things that went on there frequently, but in the last maybe 10 years, I don't think there's been much of anything, but it is a good property for that sort of thing. The other thing that I do want to point out is that if we look at residential housing as something that is going to continue, that is a big tax burden on people in homes. We do not have a place such as Hop Hog has. They have their industrial park. Now, by no means am I suggesting that Gyrodyne should be the next Hop Hog industrial park. I'm not. Because I live right on 25A. So everything that I'm telling you, I live right by Deep Wells. When I am telling you these things and you're talking about traffic, I understand it better than most. When I first moved into this house, I could make a left-hand turn out of my driveway in a nanosecond. Now I have to make a right-hand turn out of my driveway, make the first left, make another left in order to go towards Port Jefferson. So I get it. But I do think that we need to consider things that will not tax our systems, including our school system, but would be viable asset for our tax base. So the light industry that is there, and even though it might have been orchestrated under some sketchy circumstances back in the day, I think that as companies and things have gone away from that, we have lost from some viable tax, revenue that we could have. Perhaps we could make that a better light industry place. Maybe we could build on that and add some revenue without making the traffic so horrific, having an open space buffer. And somebody mentioned before, possibly another location for wastewater treatment. There are many different types of wastewater treatment systems. There are transvap systems, there are nitrogen-based systems, there's all sorts of systems, and they do not necessarily have to be dumped into even though the water supposedly, according to my daughter, you could drink it when it's treated. I always tell her, just don't tell me where you got it. If you're telling me I can drink it, just don't tell me where you got it. I don't want to know. But having that knowledge does make it possible to have all of these things that we need: open space, tax revenue, and a sewage treatment system that I think would benefit everybody. I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas, and by no means am I trying to, twist anybody's arm. I just think that we have to think a little outside the box when it comes to what our next phase is in order to bring young people in, make them want to be here, take ownership in our town, and to move it forward. That's it.
Thank you, Erica. Yeah, and I was just thinking off the top of my head, as a St. James resident too, our trustees from Head of the Harbor, and if you ever have suggestions or ideas that we can look at as far as traffic calming ideas, we would take those suggestions with open arms. Absolutely. I'll put the planning department's contact numbers and supervisor's office contact information so you have it. But if there's ever something that you're seeing research on or something that works well from your experience, send it over. We'd love that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that too. We're not just, that's the point of doing a comprehensive plan. We're not just like trying to update a zoning map. We're doing a comprehensive analysis because we know that one thing affects other things. You develop a certain area, well, you might be negatively impacting open space or traffic or something in that particular area. So, that is what this plan is doing. It knows that if you do one thing here, it may potentially impact something else there. Mm-hmm. As far as the tax ratables, yeah, a lot of that is based on, what school district you're in. So even going back to the old comprehensive plan, they were always very cognizant of that, and they always tried to balance it by putting industrial zone property in each of the school districts in town. Kings Park has its industrial area along Old Northport Road. Comac has a little piece of the Hopog Industrial Park, the Comac School District, I mean. The Hopog School District, of course, has the biggest pie. Smithtown has the Middle Country Road Corridor, the Smith Haven Mall, a lot of the stuff along 347. I know it's not generally up in St. James, but at least it's within that Smithtown school district boundary. So, you know, it is definitely a consideration, and it always has been for the town to try to put a little piece in each of the different school districts in our town.
Great. Good. I'd just like to take you up on that offer, Nicole. Thank you very much. As Highway Commissioner of our village, it would be wonderful to have a working relationship with your planning department and discuss some of the concerns that we may have and be able to reach out to you. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I know you have your hand up. Did you?
No, that was it. Thank
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll make sure that we get everybody in an email introduction to, you know, first thing tomorrow as well. I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't have anybody else with their hand up. I don't know if anybody else would like to share any input. Again, if you jumped on the call later, the raise your hand button is a small little smiley face. Well, I hope if we're using the same screen, it's on the lower right hand corner. If you just push that button and hit the raise hand button. If you're on a phone, you can hit *9, and I have Eric Neitzel. Go ahead, Eric.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to start out by saying I'm Eric Neitzel. I'm a lifelong resident of St. James. I own D. Barberry Real Estate. I'm also a landlord in the town. My heart is with St. James, and I want to thank all of you for putting this presentation on. The things that I wanted to talk about, and maybe I should save those for a later date, are more specifics dealing with some of the zoning issues, okay? Especially on 25A. The two areas that I have a lot of concern about is between Edgewood Avenue and Clinton Avenue by the church, and then up from Moriches Road to the old Hitherbrook Nursery. Those properties are currently zoned central business. The proposal here says to make it neighborhood business. I rent a lot of those properties. I own some of those properties. I have to tell you that to change that to NB, in my professional opinion and personal opinion, would do an undue hardship to a lot of the tax-paying landlords on that area. Not to mention about COVID and how everybody's gotten hurt with that. To change that zoning, in my opinion, 80 to 85% of that commercial area is already developed. There's only 3 parcels that I'm aware of between Moriches Road and Hitherbrook that are available for redevelopment. One of them is being worked on as we speak. They're a ½ acre, 3/4 of an acre, and an acre parcel. Then if I go to the other side, there's 2 other properties that are approximately an acre apiece that could get redeveloped, but they are not vacant now. However, the other properties are built and they conform to central business zoning, which is either 0 or 5-foot lot lines. When I look at neighborhood business, all of these structures would be non-conforming. So I know you talk about grandfathering in a tenant. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. If I have a tenant that's a jewelry store, if that jewelry store was to go out, we'd have to agree on a length of time before that could come back in, because if I tried to put another jewelry store in and that business was terminated before the next business went in, which would be the same business, same type of business, it would not be allowed unless it got grandfathered in that little period, okay? If I'm outside that grandfathered period, then that business could never come back there. So now you're taking away a whole select tenants that I had for years, I had or other people had, and now we can't have them. Any other business, every time I come in, because I'm going to have a non-conforming structure, I'm going to need to go in front of the board for every other tenant that goes in and out of these spaces. I feel that that's putting an undue hardship on those landlords. to compete. And I agree that we need to do a lot of the things that you're talking about. And I commend you on a lot of them. Some things are real good. I do think that the sewer line, it was a smart thing to put it in when they did, so we don't have to do it twice. Okay. But without the sewer being hooked up, the development on Lake Avenue, in my opinion, is going to be very limited, because you're going to need people to come in and spend money in this town, buy those properties and develop them. There has to be a return for them to put their money into it, okay? Also, I'm gonna say that properties are zoned a certain way, whether it's central business, neighborhood business, whatever, and property owners have been paying taxes on it for that use. To just go along and change it and put all these hardships on, to me, is wrong. And I don't think that the intent here was to hurt one side of town to help the other side of town. I think we should work as one big body to say, how can we all work together and make it better for everybody, okay? I know we're all gonna have a difference of opinions, but you have to get viable people that are gonna spend money in this downtown to create what you wanna create. Because it's not like the town is spending them, well, I shouldn't say that. The town has spent a lot of money and time and effort, and thank you. However, you're going to need private individuals to buy these properties, redevelop it, and make it viable that they can pay the taxes and those businesses can survive. In my opinion, on Lake Avenue, to only allow it, right now, it's 35 feet, 2.5 stories is what's allowed. According to what I read, you want to keep that the same. I understand that from all the meetings, that's what a lot of the people want, but there has to be a give and take. You have to get that person wanting to buy it and build that. They're not going to do it if it's not going to get a return to them. And also the type of buildings that you're going to build, in my opinion, if they were to go 3 stories on Lake Avenue at 38 feet, then you would have to put elevators on those apartments. Because if you do 2-story buildings, by law, they're only going to be walk-up apartments. So you're going to get a different type of tenancy when you have an elevated apartment and a more luxury type use. Those people will stay longer, they will shop in the town, and they will make things prosper. I think that's the idea. We need a balance between residential people living in the town. Not everybody can buy a house. Not everybody wants to buy a house, okay? But there's got to be a balance, okay? That's the way I see this. And I think that it could all be worked out. But I think to do that change on 25A, to me, is absurd. It makes no sense at all. It puts a lot of undue hardships. And I think you're not going to get enough people to develop Lake Avenue unless you give them a reason to put their money there, okay? And we need this downtown. And I think Head of the Harbor and Nessaquok should all be involved, because they're the ones that are shopping in our town here, okay? We all have the same post office. It's 11780. So we're all part of St. James, okay? But I think you have to look at what the property is zoned, what that person has been paying in taxes, and what the use is before you say, well, you don't want this and you want that. It's just a trade-off. And I think at later dates, we can talk, in more depth about certain areas. But again, I wanted to thank you, and that's my comments for tonight. Okay, and thanks again.
Thank you, Eric. Lori Ann, I apologize. You were wanting to speak. Go ahead. I'm going to send the ask to unmute button there. Go ahead.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
First and foremost, I want to thank you for hosting all this. Very important to many of us here in St. James, mostly, I'm going to say on a personal level, here on Mills Pond Road. I was, and I suppose still am, intending on discussing Mills Pond Road and what is going on here, but more immediately have to respond to Eric's comments about St. James and Lake Avenue. My husband is a native Smithtowner. We lived on Lake Avenue for between 5 and 10 years before finally moving over to Mills Pond Road. We've been here for 45 years. Certainly have embraced the town and its way of living, for good and not so good, but mostly good, I'll say. In regards to Lake Avenue, although I feel that it does need some uplift, I'm not sure where landlords are with all this and how all that is panning out. Personally, I think that the sewage that was put in place is a good thing, but I personally think that it's strongly relying on what happens in Jaradine. I hope that Smithtown has a plan B. I'm a believer in always having a plan B. St. James is a wonderful town. It's a hamlet though. And if anyone thinks that it has a chance of holding weight against Huntington, against Port Jefferson, Patchogue, it doesn't stand a chance. It's just a small little hamlet. It's a quiet town. I want to say that I hope that most people who live here would like to see it stay like that to a great degree. Yes, it does need some revitalizing, but let's not get crazy here. Okay, so that's where the town goes. I have been writing notes along the way as everyone has been speaking. I made my comments in the chat, which again, I very much appreciate. A lot that's been said. I'm so happy that other people have such strong opinions and thoughts about this, because again, my husband and I have been here in town for 45 years. We don't want to see certain things come to an end. I'm just going to try to quickly run over my notes here. You mentioned getting the news out to people back as far as 2019, if I'm correct. Flyers being sent home to children from the elementary school. We don't have elementary school children any longer. I think you need to make a greater effort to get the news out. I understand that most, I don't know what the percentages are of people who do have children in school, but there are a lot of residents who don't. And I think a greater effort needs to be made in that respect. Flyers, don't count on the newspaper. Not everyone reads the newspaper. I'm going to go to Mills Pond Road. We are very concerned here. We are a small handful. Let me just think for 1, 2, 3. There's about a half a dozen homes, including Mike Sassone's home, that are of age. Again, we've been here in our home 39 years this September. Big changes happening here. I raised 3 children here and had to raise them based on the difficulty of traffic and no sidewalks, but that was okay. We did it because this is what we had to do. Now you're asking us to take on potentially, I was told at one meeting up at in regards to Jaradine, 900 more people coming into the area daily. This is crazy for a small residential area. Mills Pond Road cannot handle this. Pardon my hesitation here because I'm looking over notes. One thing, and I apologize, I realize that maybe you earlier on you said that Jaradine wasn't necessarily part of all this. Isn't it part of the master plan here? It is, and this area is in trouble. where Jaredine goes. Setting aside Jaredine, I could almost accept that. No one has spoken here tonight about the proposal. I don't know if it's in writing, but the Bull Run Farm is said to be on the brink of being purchased by a developer who wants to put assisted living on this bit of acreage. Come on, are you kidding me? Does anyone out there know that this is happening? This area can't handle that. Possibly Jaredine, if it's kind of tucked out and away, and I guess we'll just deal with extra traffic. But assisted living on the Bull Run Farm? When is Smithtown going to step up and take responsibility? You talked about Smithtown preserving property. Why isn't Smithtown buying this property? Peconic Farm Land Preserve offered to buy the property. I don't want to say what I believe happens to that, but it didn't happen. This is an area that is so unique to St. James. This is the last of this type in St. James. Somebody help us here, because 6 houses or so is not going to make a difference in the long run. And I guess that's all I have to say for the moment. Thanks for hearing my rant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. I have Erica has her hand up again.
Okay. I have to unmute am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Lorraine, it is so evident how passionate you are about it and how much you love the area. And I have equal passion. I mean, when I grew up here, I never thought I would move back here because it was so stinking boring when I was a kid. And I went off to college and got married and decided where I was going to raise my children. And lo and behold, here I am again. It's interesting. And I do love St. James, and it is in my heart and it is in my blood. And I am every bit as concerned about it as you are. So thank you for, showing us your heart on that issue. A couple of things. Eric Neitzel also made a statement about neighborhood business as opposed to central business. And I'm not exactly sure what the differentiation is, but I'm assuming that if it had been neighborhood business, the oil, the propane place down the road across from, St. James Brewery and stuff wouldn't have been able to put on that extra story. I do believe that that whole little area there should be able to be built up a little bit. We probably could use a crosswalk light, but now you're dealing with 25A and the state road, but it's dangerous there. As far as the farm area, I was thinking that maybe like they just did on 25A up by the Stony Brook train station might be something nice to be there, a little like horseshoe area of shops and whatever to build in some revenue. That was another thing. And the other thing that I was thinking about, I know it sounds like I'm like the queen of the cesspool, but I'm actually not. Is it possible to say Suffolk County had a thing, if you wanted to put in the new system, if you put in the new cesspool system, which really isn't quite a cesspool, it's a nitrogen, it's got those little boxes and stuff. Would we be able to offer some sort of incentive through the town? If, let's say, businesses on Lake Avenue want to partner together to put maybe one of those for every 3 or 4 businesses, and that might help our drinking water. That's just an idea. The other thing that I had written down was with regard to people who do not have kids, I believe you can answer this, Nikki. I believe that the town app sends out notices on your phone. And I think those notices were sent via the town app on my phone, but I could be mistaken on that. The other thing to think about is when Gyrodyne was at full throttle, and that was probably back, I don't know, in the 60s. I know that it was doing stuff when I was a kid here. How many people were there and how many business? What was the density of population in that area? I'm wondering. Is there any way to find out that? Because at least we would have some knowledge of how it operated in the past. And I know that we have more traffic and stuff now, but it's a starting point, I think. I think I've covered everything that I had written down. The elevated apartments in St. James, another floor with elevators. I don't know, until we deal with the cesspool issue, I think that's a non-starter. And that's it. Those were all my notes.
I can answer the cesspool question if you like.
Okay.
All right, there was $250 million in a clean water fund that was for cesspool and sewer expansion. And the county executive drained it. And then this last November, a referendum was passed where he said he didn't have to pay it back. So we had $250 million that could have put cesspools and sewer systems in Kings Park, in Smithtown, and St. James. And he used it to make payroll.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Do you know that quarter-cent drinking water money? Gone.
Yeah. Doesn't that just put a stake in your heart? That kills me.
I'm just full of good news.
Yeah, it's full of good news. I wonder, maybe the town can do something with a little bit of maybe tax abatement if businesses wanted to do that. I mean, I'm here talking about making taxes, but making revenue for taxes, but it's so interconnected. I don't see how you can just do one thing without, I think it has to be done collectively in order for things to, grow and move without collapsing on itself.
A big part of the problem with wastewater management is, this would have been a lot easier doing this back, when Nassau and Queens were sewering and you didn't have as many residents here. Dave, you might actually have some information. I know that there is a couple of residential grants that exist for replacing outdated septic systems. And with regards to wastewater management facilities, the biggest problem for a town is the actual cost. Like, for example, I believe we were trying to get some federal grant money last year, and we were looking at what it would cost to build a start to finish wastewater management facility.
Right.
And that price tag was about 157 million, I believe. Is that right, Dave? 157?
It's definitely easier to pipe it to a really far away place than it is to build a whole new one. There were some people who said, pipe south to near Southern Boulevard. Yeah, we did have some prices on that. I think it's over $100 million. The town did get $40 million in grant money from the state 3 years ago to source 20 million for Smithtown, 20 million for Kings Park. They also got still working on a grant for the dry sewer main that went into St. James. I think that was around $4 million just for the dry pipe. But yeah, these things do get expensive really fast. Yes, I see that. I said the town got the $40 million. Yes, that $40 million went to the county for projects in the town. I should make that clear. But they were for the Kings Park and the Smithtown projects. So yeah,
just so people know, that quarter-cent sales tax that you've been paying since 1987, a huge portion of it, we had $250 million saved, was just for those type things. and it's gone. Under this administration, the Blow administration, he gave away contracts he couldn't afford to pay, so he took it. And then he put it on the referendum, and it basically said, that it's, to defund the police if you vote for this. It has nothing to do with the police budget, zero. But he convinced people to vote for it. I mean, he did it years ago to rate it the first time and saying he was going to pay it back. He borrowed $20 million, 10 for open space, 10 for water, and he used the term tax stabilization. So when you saw on the ballot tax stabilization, open space, and clean water, you jumped on it. But what we didn't tell you was that the tax stabilization portion was that I can raid the sewer fund, the clean water fund, for $250 million. Now, you're probably thinking to me, how could that possibly be? That would never happen. Well, guess what?
I believe
it absolutely happened.
I believe it. Yeah. I truly believe
I
it.
I could do 5 hours on the truth in government and then the way they put things out in perception. And
Well,
it's sad.
I just posted, I kind of think, we're going around and around and around, but it does seem to me that nothing really can be developed and done unless we have our wastewater treatments thing done first. It seems, talking about building from the bottom up, I really do believe that that's the case. I think that probably the investments need to be in the area of what we're going to do with our wastewater. Once we've solved that, then everything else, other than traffic, but everything else seems to be a much simpler concept because the wastewater is taken care of. Am I incorrect in that logic?
Nope, you're onto it. You're right. And that's really, so when you hear the price tags that David and I were talking about, the over 100 million for a wastewater management treatment facility, and you hear 40 million came down from the state to sewer, 20 million for Main Street Smithtown, 20 million for Main Street Kings Park,
right.
And then we went to work on Lake Avenue, which is a town road, which gives us a lot of we can actually get, when you have a town road and you don't have to work with a state road, or you don't have to work with the state or the county, you can get things done a lot more efficiently because it's one government working
one
on
agency.
But bottom line is, the town government really needs the support from state and federal levels to be able to fund these projects. And unfortunately, when it comes to a sewer line, and we know how great the nitrate reduction is when you have mostly, I believe most of the whole community is very well educated about water quality and sewers, where I think 20 years ago we used to associate sewers with like Elizabeth, New Jersey, but it's something that it takes the longest time. You don't see it, it's all underground, but it makes the biggest difference. And that's really the direction that the town has really started to pave the way towards with moving forward with these 3 sewer projects in the official business districts of the hamlets of St. James, Kings Park, and Smithtown.
So maybe the thing to do really is, I know we're talking about a master plan here, but maybe the thing to do is to do like a campaign to get everybody on board with the idea of just because you can't see it doesn't mean we aren't doing great things,
If I may jump in here, if you call the Suffolk County Water Authority tomorrow and you ask them about the nitrogen problem in our drinking water, you know what they will tell you? It's not even in the top 20 of their concerns because they have filters that take it out.
Right, but that's their concern. We're talking about our town.
No, what I'm saying is maybe nitrogen in our groundwater isn't the problem. Nitrogen in our surface water along the sound and the bays is the problem.
So doesn't that have to get captured?
Yes, well, what I'm saying is if you put those systems in along surface water, closer to surface water, like let's look at the Smithtown Lending Country Club. They pour nitrogen on the golf course all day long, and it leaches into the river.
Right.
when, look, I'm not a chemist, but I know when we had the guy in charge of the Suffolk County Water Authority come into the legislature and say, look, nitrogen is not even in the top 20 concerns of polluting our drinking water. We have filters that take it out. When we have nitrogen problems, we take it out. So, you know, I can talk in circles with this because I've talked to the scientists about it. Some of these things you put in your front lawn, these new systems, the same. It's basically a cesspool with a blender in it. It just moves it around.
What a thought.
That's what it does. It's very simple, and they put bubbles in it, and supposedly it creates some kind of atmosphere where the nitrogen dissolves.
So are you
if you put bleach in it, it doesn't work.
So are you suggesting that maybe that shouldn't be the focus?
Look, all I know is when the head of the water authority comes in front of the legislature and says, we're not concerned with nitrogen in our drinking water, and now we're spending millions of dollars on sewers. I don't know, maybe we take, if it's that, I'm not a scientist, but if that, he said, I'd rather spend the money on the filters, which is a couple $1 million, as opposed to $150 million.
Would that solve
Something to
the
think about.
problem?
I don't know.
Would that solve the problem of being able to have more cafes and restaurants on Lake Avenue? Because part of the problem
They
was
would have
that
to change it.
part of the problem was that the cesspools that are there now, and this is throughout the town. I don't want to just be a St. James isolationist, but part of the problem was that the cesspools do not accommodate large numbers of people if you want to have a cafe or a restaurant. So that's why.
With the craziness of it, unless you buy seating capacity you buy a piece of property and sterilize that piece of property, then they'll give you more. So what does that mean?
I don't know.
It's a transfer of development rights.
I'd like to just take a minute, everybody, if we can. I think
we're way off topic.
I think we're getting off.
Well,
go anyway.
If we can bring it back. I think there was, Nicole, did you say that there was one more person that had their hand up? And by the way, anyone that wants to continue the conversation about septic
cesspools
and sewage treatment plants, we could do that at another point. You're welcome to call. It is largely a county issue, so the town does not have real authority over it, but we do play a role. So you're welcome to reach out to us or to the county. But was there someone else, Nicole?
Yeah, we have a couple of people with their hands up. I'm gonna have Michael again, and then I have Rajiv, and then Natalie, and then Kerry. So go ahead, Michael.
Hi, everyone. I was just thinking as we're talking here and how sad that is, the percentage ratio of open space that we have, how sad that is, how sad, and that we want to do some more disruption to what's left in St. James. And one of the things I was thinking of, Eric, as Eric was talking, not that I agree with him or disagree with him, but how do we create this win-win situation within our town? And I was thinking how even myself, when I go out to dinner, a lot of times I go out to dinner, I'm a summer guy and I'd love to take my Corvette and go cruising around and have dinner somewhere. And I love Northport and not so much Patchogue. I do Patchogue though. And, the offering that is there is just to sit down outside and have dinner kind of thing. And I think to alleviate the traffic problem would to bring our own people into Lake Avenue. We don't need to bring more people into Lake Avenue. We need to bring our people into Lake Avenue.
Absolutely.
I love what Nicole, and what spurred that in me was what Nicole said about the concerts up at Long Beach, and how people shop and then go to Long Beach, and how there's a rise in their profit on that weekend. And how can we create that? Like taking Geraldine, look at Hoyt Farm when they have their concert series, the amount of people that go there and the revenue. I don't know if they charge to get in there. They don't charge. If we charge $2 to get in. So how can we make if you take areas like Geraldine, which is plenty of acreage, make it Esqurian or concert series or stuff going on there, to bring in more revenue. Creating businesses to bring in taxes, that's malarkey. That never worked. That never worked. My taxes still go up. We bring in industrial, my taxes still go up. Hub Hog taxes are the same. I grew up in Hub Hog, Smithtown. Taxes are the same there. I went to Hub Hog High School. The taxes are the same. There's no difference. The industrial park isn't doing anything for us over there, as far as I can see, at any great magnitude anyway, So if we bring, traffic brings traffic lights. And that's where the traffic is, because everybody's stopping at these traffic lights. If you go to areas, and I'm sure you guys are a lot bigger than me, I swing a hammer, so, and I stay local. But like I'll go down the Wisconsin Highway, say, heading towards Port Jeff, heading east. And it's just light after light after light after light, 2 lights coming out of a shopping center, and this is where the traffic problems are. And especially when we talk about the beautiful 25A corridor that we have, that we're going to ruin if we start adding more lights to that. When this isn't about the Geraldine project, but it is a big problem, this Geraldine project, what it's going to do at that portion of 25A. We're going to have a light on Mills Pond Road and then another light for them to get out onto 25A from this project. It's disgusting. What that will do to that little area of 25A that's so historical and beautiful. So I think really we need to bring St. Jamesians into Lake Avenue. These are the people that are going to shop there. Not to bring more people from outside, not to build tenant buildings and low income. This isn't a low income neighborhood. So why would we introduce low income? This is not a low income neighborhood. There are other low income neighborhoods and other areas to do that. The other thing Lori brought up was the facility that was acquiring Bull Run Farm to build an assisted living. How many assisted living buildings do we need in Smithtown, period? They're all over the place. How many do we need? And they are, from what I understand, they have their own treatment centers for their sewerage, which when the wind's right, you can smell. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, I have Rajiv. Go ahead. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Are you there?
Looks like he disappeared, Nicole.
No, he's there, and his microphone is on.
Oh, there. Okay.
One more time, I'll say, we can't hear you. I see that your mute is off. Maybe your computer volume or your speakers are might be a speaker issue.
If you have a comment though, and you're welcome to type it into the chat, and we can try and answer that way if we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit the ask to start video in case that helps. Maybe you can also call in. I'll include the phone number. Oh, there, I see you. Okay. We can see you talking, but we can't hear you.
It looks like he's using his phone. He might not have allowed.
Yeah. So
he might not have allowed the app to use his microphone.
Yeah. No, we still can't hear you. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put the phone number in the chat. This way, you can try if you want to try calling in, and I'll let Kerry go. I'm sorry, Natalie, and then Kerry. See if we can get you on the phone. I'm going to send the phone number and information in the chat right now. So this way you can get a chance to speak. I just put it in there. All right. So we'll come back to Rajiv in a second. Natalie? I'm going to ask you to unmute, Natalie. There you go.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Okay. A few comments. I apologize for coming in a little late on the meeting, but I was very interested to hear the comments of some of the people I haven't met in the community yet and would love to. I'm not here as long as some of you, only since 1985. No, actually 73, but purchased properties in St. James in 1985. One of them is the old Calderon Theater, which was a vaudeville theater in the town, and which is a very pivotal place now, in that it houses some of the local activities where we have no place to go. Before I talk about that, I just want to mention something that I can make a statement about Gyrodyne, and that it is privately owned property. The town can't tell them what to do. They must comply with the rules and the laws and the regulations of our community, but it is owned by someone other than us, and we cannot decide what they ultimately will do there as long as they comply with what they're supposed to comply. Having said that, I'd like to just go back to Lake Avenue for a moment. Lots of comments were made from people who said it's just a sleepy little town, that really it can't compete with anybody that's like Huntington. But I have to say that I vehemently and passionately disagree. I have seen in the last 3 or 4 years a change already in Lake Avenue, from its being designated a cultural and historic arts district, which is part of the organization that I had, and which is trying very hard to bring the community back to, as I believe it was Stephen said, I'm not quite sure, because I don't have the names on my screen now, to be a place where people from St. James want to actually come. Right now, what is there to come to? Well, soon there's going to be Celebrate Park. When the town purchased the property where the old Viking bar was and leveled it, our organization, Celebrate St. James, pledged to build a park there for art, music, culture, children, meetings, and a place to go and sit, have an ice cream, a cup of coffee, meet a neighbor, walk through a town that has something to offer the community. That is feasible. That is possible. That is happening. And St. James is happening. In the early 1900s, and I'm proud to say I wasn't born then because I'm not young now, but I read about it, I wrote about it, we sang about it. All of those things because we were the happening town. We were the Hamptons of the early 1900s. This town was a wonderful cultural hopping place. I'm not saying that we want to attract the whole world to our community, but we have so much to offer in the way of our history, in the way of our culture, in the way of the things that we have that a lot of people just don't know about. Our children don't know about. Some of their parents don't even know about. I'm noticing on this, and I will say, I'll take it from me, there aren't too many people who are on this Zoom meeting that seem to be under 50. That seems to be a shame, because the other part of my organization, which is called Celebrate St. James, is past, present, and future. Where is our future? If we do not grow, if we do not change, if we do not have something to offer as a wonderful, maybe a little sleepy hamlet that has interesting things to do and people to talk about and a history to remember, then it's our fault. This is the first time we have had an opportunity in 40 years to encourage growth. We have a planning department and a building department. We have a town supervisor and a town board that are working like crazy. to bring us everything that we can have. No, we're not going to be the big city, and we may never be a big Huntington, and we don't want to be. We want to be a very special St. James, not only for ourselves and our community, not to remember the past, and not only for the children that we may or may not have living here, but for the people to come. All I've heard since I have begun this organization is how proud people are of St. James. Whether they aspire to live here or they have lived here for many years, we have a lot more to offer. And we have a group of people who are willing to work hard to give it to all of us. I want to mention something about the community of the businesses on Lake Avenue. I happen to own a property there, and I have a store for rent. And I have a young man who wants to come and rent the store. And because we do not have sewers, he may have to, and he may not even rent the store, spend at least $10,000 to $15,000 putting in a new cesspool because he wants to have a wet store. You know that not every business on Lake Avenue owns the property. We have renters, they are tenants, and they are business owners like myself who pay very high taxes. Of course, we want something for our money, and if we're willing to work for it, we will get it. But it is essential for us to have a sewer system that actually works for us, or we cannot grow. And one of the things that I will remind you of, even though we may not be the biggest town or a Huntington, is that people come to us for the great restaurants that we already have, which will attract more. So across the street from this wonderful Celebrate Park, which hopefully will be completed by the end of 2021, and for some of you who didn't know it was going to be there, I encourage you to read a newspaper, go on the Smithtown channel, and if you are interested, don't say you don't know about things. Make it your business to find out about things because things are happening. And I have never called town hall and never gotten an answer or a direction or a place to find the answer. So for all of us who are out there, yes, we all have our personal interests. If that may be the case, that's what human nature is. And I want to say that this kind of dialogue that is a give and take is really the way people should behave. We're not arguing with one another. We're not fighting with one another. We're expressing our own feelings. And some of us have really very good ideas. But trust me, from what I've learned in my workings with the town and asking questions of the town is, they sure have asked all those questions that you've already asked, and they've tried to find answers. It's not as easy as we all think when we throw out our suggestions. I have seen the work that goes behind it. And believe me, they're working really hard for us. So I want to thank you all just because I'm interested in listening what you all have to say. I want to tell you there is a theater in this town that needs to be explored as one of our special landmarks and a meeting place that we need. There's going to be a park in this town where you can gather. And there are many other wonderful events that we can create here if we work together for progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. I have Rajiv, I believe you used the phone to call in just a minute ago. Why don't you go ahead and speak, and then we'll call Kerry.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you so much. You know what? I think what I have to say and what I wanted to say kind of follows the last several callers, and my comment came about from what Eric Neitzel said earlier. You know, on the Lake Avenue corridor and, you know, some of these other places that we've looked at and have identified to grow and beautify, I think it's important that we make sure that we really think this through. You know, the few feet in height that's going to go from 2.5 stories to 3 stories in Lake Avenue, you know, as Eric said, is going to make a tremendous difference for the quality of business owners that are going to come in. You know, if we want to make all our facades, you know, similar, if we want to make our, you know, buildings look nice, that we have to make sure that our businesses are going to be profitable. So they'll invest in their buildings and in the area. So we're not going to be a Huntington. We're not going to be a Patchogue. We're too small. We're not increasing the size of Lake Avenue. We're not making it longer. It's the same size. But if we can get that third story in there, and we can get a better quality business person who can be profitable and can reinvest, and then maybe some of these smaller seating takeout places can actually have silverware and plates, you can get a better quality. Not everything's going to be just a takeout place. And people will come there, and people will bring their families there from our local area, and we can enjoy it more. But I think it's very key that we're spending all this money, and yeah, it makes sense to put the sewers in while the road's open, but it doesn't make sense if we don't have a place and run those sewers. So if we're spending any time thinking about, putting in a senior housing, and we're putting this huge other company coming in, making all these apartments and this and that, and we can't even go to 3 stories on the Lake Avenue, I think that's backwards. I mean, if you can get some nice 1-bedroom, 1 bathroom, maybe 2-bedroom apartments, we can keep some of the, as the young lady just said, I mean, there's nobody below 50 on the call, because maybe they're not, there's nothing for them. You have a railroad right there. People can commute to their offices and this and that. We can keep some of those people in our town instead of leaving to go to these other places. So, that's my 2 cents. I mean, it doesn't make sense to spend all this money. You're going to have all these shops that look differently, that aren't going to be able to, invest in their businesses because they're not getting anything from it. I think it's very key, because that is where a big tax base for the community or the businesses. And when you have businesses that are successful and can reinvest into that area, into the area they are, then that's what the community needs. That's my 2 cents. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we have Kerry Marr, who I have to give a shout out for, because I believe it was back in 2015, Kerry started getting on the phone and showing up at town hall. I wasn't at town hall yet, but I got to be a witness to it. And if it wasn't for, I think Kerry really kind of got the ball rolling on a lot of what's happening in St. James. So Kerry, thank you for being with us. Go ahead. I'll be quiet now.
Hi, everyone. Let me say, for the people who don't know me or my family, we're true St. Jamesian. My parents settled here in 1976. We have been born, been raised here, and our heart is here. And now my family is being raised here. What I've been sitting on the chamber board for 20 plus years, even though I'm 25. And I look and say, I wanted to do more. The chamber does so much, but the help was needed. And I still thought at the time, we should do more. We want to help, and we want to encourage businesses to come here. I listen to all the businesses of what they want. We need this, we need that. And I have no certification in economics whatsoever. I am not perfect. So I thought, by saying, let's get a group of people together to start a civics organization. And once again, we're not perfect. We know anything about infrastructure, but we got taught very soon, very early. And Eric Neitzel was not only a key component, and Mary Matarin, which is now our senator. How wonderful that is to have somebody of our town be up, touching the centeredness of St. James to that point. But, we look and say, I saw how the town has grown from my parents being here. We have continued to grow, and thinking of all the years past on how involved my family was and is and will to be, that every event in this town, people in St. James love to give. And so as we started this civic adventure, yes, our former supervisor listened to me and of course got numerous phone calls. And Lynn Noack, who's one of our councilwomen, you know, I passed up a few points with her and said, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? Long story short, we endeavored in 2017 a civic organization. And from that point on, it is bursted with so many great people. One being Natalie, who I say I have energy, but Natalie, I commend you on the energy you have and the love that you have for this town. Not only that, but you have knowledgeable people like an Eric Neitzel, going back to his parents, who is Florence, who sat on chamber boards, and Ed DiBarbieri, who was our forefathers of this town. And numerous people that go without saying who tried to do years ago for our little hamlet and always to keep the aspect of this little hamlet. But going forward, as far as what infrastructure was to mean, rather than slapping down pavement, what we thought we was going to just do, our supervisor now has been led by a phenomenal team, and Pete and Allison and Nicole, thank you so much. But our supervisor and the town council people have been truly keeping us at anything that we want. They entertain us. We are on a talking level. They listen to us all the time. And we have to look at, we are so grateful and thankful for that type of government, because if it was the other way around, we would be growing weeds on the side road. You know, we have people who care about this town, who love this town and are in this town. Nicole and I went to school together, even though we're 25. So anyway, that being said, you know, I commend the people who, you know, is it a win-win situation with many developments, this and that? Listen, people want to be part of Town of Smithtown. They want to live in St. James because it is a wonderful place to be. And I truly commend everybody to this wonderful town. And because we do give a lot. In the aspect of starting the civic, there were so many different aspects that bursted with not only one point. I know that Rob Trotter can say that I was on the phone with him numerous times, and this one and that one. There were so many different angles that we didn't know which horn to grab first, because there was so many different aspects. The sewage, yes, sewage in itself is not a pretty word, but for having to listen to business owners and also listening to restaurants and the whole understanding, once again, we are not perfect. I'm not perfect. And this has been a learning curve from the beginning. And understanding what it is that the water authority basically tells you how many seats you can have versus, well, if we had a septic system, it would be different. So listening to all of this and having the investment of putting that pipe in, and yes, myself, Eric, and Mary Matera went to Senator Flanagan and basically said, we just need a few dollars. And he entertained us and he listened to us and then granted us to us. This is a town who's been waiting and who we need to get not only to our residents, but to our businesses. And yes, Mike, you made a very valid point. I love it on every aspect. We have to patronize our stores. It is so easy to do Amazon. It's so easy to do everything, but we have to patronize our stores. There's a new ice cream place in there. I'm sure my kids will be in there all the time. But you know what? We have to also know, just like the Ed DiBarbieri years ago knew every store, whichever, 25A Lake Avenue, patronize our stores. They need us and we need them. At the end of the day, we're a little town, a little village. And just like how we could say, Nicole and I went to school, I'm a second generation, I'm this, you know, and it's a wonderful thing stating for people being in this town for 45 plus years. But I want everyone to know our hands are wide open. Please join the Civic. Please come and help us, because this has been an endeavor that really took off. And there's so many different angles. I learned about grants. I've learned about, listen, we've tried to get people to come to our town rather than going to their town. That's why we've had car shows. We've had a farmer's market. We've had summer concerts. We've had our summer nights. All these things that took amazing amount of people who worked voluntarily on this to have our town burst. And we were doing it. And of course, COVID hit. How wonderful. But it doesn't mean that we're stopping. We will continue because of our goal was to do all these wonderful things. But I ask everyone, it's a major, major overhaul of a lot of work. We have this fabulous government that is actually working with us. If I can share a story that like Merchants Road Park or Gaynor Park, probably, even though we're 25, Nicole, probably still had the 40-year-old railroad tires on it. And now as we get older, even though 25, we say we have children and we have to upgrade our parks because what has happened in the last AK 40 years. And that's why we have a fabulous government who is working with us and to do what, whatever we ask within limitations, of course. Anything that they have done has been classy, beautiful, well-spoken, and most dignified in every aspect because they're listening to us. We are the taxpayers, and I know that anytime if you have to call the supervisor, he will get back to you or Nicole will, because they want to hear from you. So, in the aspect, and of course, Natalie said it the best. She should have spoke last rather than me. She is so beautifully well-spoken, Natalie, and she gives so much to the community because this was some person who took the horns and said, we need to look at this aspect of the past, present, future of the arts district. And it's so amazing because look how well that group has done. So I commend everybody for all their comments. I know that we all have the best interest. We all might not agree, but we all know that we're working towards how we are growing as a community. And infrastructure means so much. And, once again, we, as some people want to say that we don't know everything, but we're learning a lot. So Nicole, all I can say is thank you for everything. And Pete, if you're still on the call, Allison, you've been wonderful. And I went to school with Peter's sister also. Small town USA, of course, always. So once again, for our forefathers who did so much work before us, I commend everybody and thank God for this little town. My heart is always with St. James.
Thank you, Carrie. And I just in closing, I know we have Councilwoman Inzerillo with us tonight. The town board hears all of you, and there's some really great, there's some great ideas and some really smart input that we're gonna talk about tomorrow and the days after, and as we continue on this process. And thank you all for sharing tonight. And I'll give the mic back to Allison.
Thanks, Nicole. I appreciate, and I know that everyone here from the town appreciates hearing from every person that was on this call, everyone that spoke and put your messages in chat. Please know that you were heard. And as Nicole said, we are bringing the recommendations and comments that everyone has given to the town board. And we ask you to stay involved and keep updated on as the plan progresses. There will be notification of the public hearing. Please continue to check the website because we'll be posting updates, any recommended changes to the plan and so forth. So please continue to check there, and always feel free to call our office. Nicole put the number in there before. It's 631-360-7540. You can also email the planning department, smithtownplanning@smithtownny.gov. And thank you again.
I'm going to include the planning department's email just one more time in case anybody needs it for the record. Sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Judy, I will be in touch with you. And everyone, hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you all so much.
Good night.
Thank you.